we have to create the right vibe, the energy, and everybody at the organization has to feel so privileged to be here. It's no other way.
Thanks for listening to the Purely Arsenal podcast. Please follow us on Twitter at Purely Arsenal FP for all the latest Arsenal podcasts.
Welcome to another edition of a Purely Arsenal sit-down podcast. We're here to review the 3-0 loss at home to Brighton and the end of our title race. And for this joyous pleasure, I've got Garet Kreutziger with me. How you doing, Garet?
Jack, I'm back, and it's, I think, the first time in a long time I've done a podcast with you where we haven't won. So this is a different feeling, I got to say. I'm very glad we didn't do this immediately after the match. I've had some time to digest, discuss. We've been texting a lot about this. I feel like I've been able to come to terms a little bit with it, more than I would have been very unreasonably passionate had we done this hot after the match. But, the sun is shining. It's all good, man. How you doing?
Good, mate. It's all good. I'm already thinking and talking with you guys about pre-season and what the prep marks are for us to get to the next level. And we took a huge jump this season, taking a huge jump with Arteta almost every season. And I don't see any reason why we won't next season. So despite the fact we've got to review it, and we've got to obviously talk about the fact that we've definitely had a setback. I think we've had, 2 wins in 7. We've definitely had our toughest part of the season. We'll talk about why. And then, but ultimately we've got to look back at the whole season at this point as well. And I think it was probably a pretty big long shot to push City at this point anyway. I feel like, it was obviously lost a lot earlier than this, but it would have been nice to push them into that final week where they had to play the likes of Brighton and stuff like that. But going into the game, Garet, just before we obviously found out that Zinchenko was done for the season or possibly done for the season. Obviously the season's only a few weeks now. So Tierney was an obvious replacement there. I had no real issues with that. But then obviously during the game, we also lost Martinelli. We can talk a little bit about the refereeing decisions and what happened there, but it did feel like at that point, where I don't think we really started that well, but it felt like we really had a lot of first-team players for whatever reason weren't playing in this game. Right? We had Saliba out for the season. We had Partey in the worst slump he's ever been in for Arsenal, and that might have something to do with the Saliba absence. It might have something to do with, I think, Ben White dropping off quite a bit as well. I'm noticing that sort of right side area not fitting. Then obviously the absence of Zinchenko, which going forward at least has been a huge part of our success this season. And then we lose probably our most on-form attacking player in Martinelli. So I just... I wonder what your thoughts are on this. After, it's a 3-0 loss. I think it wasn't really a 3-0 game, but I don't think it was a game we deserved to win. What were your thoughts on it? Overall, just disappointed that we didn't push it a bit further?
I think just from a overall perspective of the match, if we were to just kind of zoom through the entire thing and think about how I felt when it was all said and done, it just felt like the most lifeless, immature performance that I've seen from this team all season. And it almost felt like this was a result of a team that was the second youngest squad in the Premier League. And it was just, it seemed like naive. And I don't know, it seemed like we got beat on almost every facet of the game, from, player on player, tactically, the manager. I felt like our substitutions were terrible. Other than the Nelson
one where he pushed Trossard inside and Xhaka came off, which I kind of understood. Beyond that, didn't understand anything.
Yeah, I couldn't. I genuinely couldn't make sense of any of them. The only one I could that I thought that I was like, okay, that makes sense, was when Martinelli couldn't walk anymore and he had to put Trossard on.
Right.
Other than that, I didn't understand what the manager was thinking in that regard. I don't know. I'm getting frustrated again just thinking about it. But it was a really tough game to watch from start to finish. I thought it was super start. There's no flow to the game. I think the long injury times in both the first and the second half kind of painted that picture as well. Brighton, I think we gave them a little too much respect. With teams coming to the Emirates, and we got completely outplayed in many different ways. So I don't know. To me, it just, I guess to summarize, it was a naive, immature, and lifeless performance. And I know the circumstances of where our potential finish in the season were. I don't know. To me, it felt like a team that had known Everton had got the pants beat off of them right before we kicked off, and they just had no motivation. That's how it felt to me. I don't know if that's actually the truth or not, but it felt like a team that was maybe hoping Everton could take something from City, who just beat this Brighton team 4-1 the weekend prior. And it didn't happen. I don't know. What do you think? That's kind of where, I guess, to summarize. Yeah,
it's hard to really disagree with that. I do think the first goal in games where you're not quite at it is quite crucial. And I've watched back parts of the first half, and a lot of people, I think you could watch that game in the first half and think Brighton were the better team. And I think for a large part they were. They had about 62% of the ball. But I think we had 8 shots to their 2. And we had some really good chances in the first half. We kind of pressed them into mistakes. I don't know if you remember some of the chances we had. We had Saka, one that just went wide near the half-time whistle. But then early in that, Odegaard had a couple. One which he decided not to shoot, very frustrating. One which just went past the post, which he didn't catch quite cleanly. Trossard had one that hit the bar. Jesus had one that near post. We had by far the better chances. We didn't play well, but I do think it was quite... If we intended to play that way, I thought it was quite intelligent. I thought we really pressed high, and I thought we tried to catch them out. And they love to play out the back. They're very confident in playing out the back, right? They're almost more confident than any team, I think, in the league playing out the back, even more so than us at times. And it was impressive to see that they were just gonna do it anyway. But we did catch them out a few times, and I just think the first goal could be so crucial in a game like that, because once you go 1-0 down, and we've had so many of those at home this season, and we're 4 points behind, and there's very few games left, and it feels like it just takes draws the energy out of you, Yeah. So I remember at half time saying, okay, I don't think we're playing great, but also we could easily be 1 or 2-0 up here and be going, we're not playing great, but we're up, and we didn't. I felt we really let a few big chances go where we just didn't test the keeper enough, to be honest.
That was my biggest complaint with how we had performed up to the point of conceding, was that we had put ourselves in a lot of good opportunities to take that first goal, and we didn't even test the keeper. I mean, Jesus, I think you're just about to say, he had that good shot at the near post. It was a nice save with his feet that the keeper made right there. But I mean, I just think back to like the Odegaard chance, hitting the crossbar. Was the Saka chance that was in the first half when it was off the corner and he missed the frame. I mean, it was inches marginally, but my big frustration is that, when you get into these positions, I want to see my best players test the keeper, right? Yeah. Like if it's, I don't even know at this point, if it's Ben White or Gabriel or Kivior or someone that I wouldn't, or, Jorginho, who, pops up with a goal here and there. But like, if it was someone that hasn't been as clinical for us this season, then I'd be like, I fell to the wrong person, right? In this opportunity. But when Bukayo Saka has a chance to put it on frame and he's inside the penalty box and pulls it wide, it's very frustrating. Martin Odegaard should have taken a touch, bang, put it on goal, but he takes another touch and tries to play a player in. I don't know. It's just hard to comprehend when they've been clinical all season.
Yeah, I agree, because it fell to the players that we really relied upon, and when they did so well, frustrating. We did so well in such a tough game against Newcastle, to then go and not blow it, but just have a setback in a game that on paper is one you would like to have, with it being at home and following such a bad defeat for Brighton and all that kind of stuff. And they had players out as well,
Mm-hmm.
They had Lamptey out and 1 or 2 others out. And in the second half, the first goal, which is probably the most crucial part of the game, because after that the game has to change, and you start to go for things a little bit more, though I never really felt like we had them under the cosh really ever. I don't think we really sustained any pressure in the second half. It just didn't feel like we had what it took to come back, which made the changes I think the changes made us worse, if anything, which was crazy. But the first goal was a lot of blame in different areas. I think Saka's pretty poor at tracking his man. I don't think Tierney does great with the headed clearance. Like he just it just goes up in the air and back to the play. I'm not sure if he's off balance, but the obvious one is Kivior. I mean, I know people are saying it's a foul. I do want to go back to a couple of referee decisions in the first half, but I know people are saying it's a foul. But when you watch it, even if it is a foul, you have to carry on unless your leg's fallen off, don't you?
Yeah, I almost didn't understand what happened. It was almost like everyone just kind of stopped.
Slow motion.
And then I when the goal went in, the celebration was almost like kind of muted. The guy kind of ran off to the corner as if like, oh, is he going to give it to me? I don't know. It seemed, I thought for sure something was going to be like, oh, the ref was going to blow his whistle and give us a free kick or restart play, or I couldn't even make sense of what happened. And then you see the replay, and I mean, maybe I can't tell anyone how bad it hurt. It didn't happen to me, but if it just looked like a guy gave him a flat tire and took his shoe off. Like, it wasn't like he got raked down his Achilles or like stomped on his calf or something. And I don't know if he was trying to make a meal out of it because he felt he was out of position or something. I mean, I don't know. I'm really projecting.
It's really odd.
It was odd, yeah. It was odd. But at the time we conceded, I mean, it was the 51st minute.
So much time.
We had 8 minutes. I mean, there was 40 minutes plus. 45, 47 minutes of football still to play. And it seemed like it was such a gut punch. Yeah, it was bad. And I don't think the referee covered himself in glory this entire match. It's not really.
Well, what do you think about those first? I mean, the obvious ones that's very out to you, the Martinelli 2 incidents, right?
So, yeah.
I think he's quite lucky, at the very least, not to be carded for the first one at home. I mean, even if he got sent off for that, you probably would have had to take it on the chin. I mean, it wasn't a nice challenge. No. At the same time, it shouldn't affect the ability to make a decision on subsequent challenges. And Caicedo's one was pretty bad as well, and which probably ended his season, didn't it? Yeah,
I mean, not only was it a bad challenge, it just looked bad. What's his name? Mitoma?
Mitoma, yeah.
Yeah, Mitoma. I mean, he flailed down to the ground, took it right to the chin, did a good little spin in the air and fell flat, motionless. I mean, he might have been embellishing, but I mean, it was a big hit, and you've seen red cards given for that. Those types of barge shoulder charges to the air. So I was really shocked. I don't know if it was the benefit of the time in which the foul occurred in the game. It was so early that the ref was like, I can't impact the game this early. But yeah, the Caicedo one was equally as clumsy. And it ended up taking Martinelli out for the match. And I can't believe he didn't receive a card for that. And he might have been saying, well, I let you get away with one. So kind of got to he might have been playing some of that, but I don't know. I think I hate discussing the referees because to me, the quality of refereeing in England, considering the quality of the product, is so not on the same playing field. It's a tragedy, honestly.
Yeah.
And I don't want to say that the referee impacted our ability to get something out of this match, because we have, even though Zinchenko, even though Thomas Partey might as well be out for the season considering his form, the list goes on. Martinelli coming out early. This 11 that was on the pitch had plenty to get a result against the 11 that Brighton put on the pitch. And I have the stats here in front of me, and I didn't realize it was this one-sided. I mean, shots, they had 2 less shots, 4 more on target.
Yep.
60% possession from Brighton. I mean, I would be shocked to see maybe outside of Manchester City another team that's come in and had more of the ball than we did at home. I don't know.
Yeah, we actually dominated. Away was a little bit different, but Man City at home, we dominated the ball at City at home, didn't we? And we know Brighton like to have the ball, but we made it too easy for them.
We made it way too easy. And the passes, they had almost 200 more passes than us.
Yeah.
Pass accuracy almost 10% better. I mean, gosh, so poor.
Do you think going forward, because Zinchenko has, I think there was some stat out there that says Zinchenko has about 60 to 70 passes a game, and obviously we can't play. There's no one really, and it's not really a slight on Tierney, but there's no one really in the team that takes that role on. Right? We used to put way back earlier in the season, try to put Tommy Asso in there, but no one takes that role on where they can just basically be right next to the central midfielders and just popping balls off left, right, and centre. I think Tierney had 4 passes completed or something like that in the first half. So, but clearly we didn't. What was good, I thought, about this game is we tried to use Tierney as more of a traditional left back rather than inverted him. We clearly weren't trying to build play through him, and I thought that was a good idea. I was like, it's not something he's used to doing. I didn't actually mind that. It was more collectively, and I really felt the first goal. I was watching it, and I've watched the Bournemouth games and the other games where we've come back, and I certainly sensed a little bit of that, but I was like, I do not see anything in this team today that's going to bring us back. And I think Arteta saw that too, and that's why he made the subs that he did. But I find it so odd. Sometimes I feel like he panics in games and make subs just for the sake of making them, and rather than try to, rather than like top teams, and which I think we are, they figure things out. They, like against Southampton, he became more reluctant to make certain changes. And what happened towards the end of that game? The top players, Odegaard, Sakas, they started to figure how to, correct their errors, and we almost won the game. And I would never, like I said a few weeks ago, I'd never take Odegaard off if you're chasing the game. It just doesn't make any sense. There's no data to prove it. It always brings us back. So
look at what he did against, was it Southampton?
Yeah.
It was like the 89th minute.
Exactly.
A 3-goal comeback and in one that we almost 4 goals in 10, 12 minutes. If it wasn't for 2 to 5 inches on the crossbar from Trossard. I mean, that the substitutions were so I don't even know how to describe them. Immature from Arteta's perspective. It just seemed like they had no real purpose. I can't make sense of what he was doing. If you're chasing a game, why would you take off Gabriel Jesus and Martin Odegaard? Why would you do that? And I love him, but Bukayo Saka has been in the dumps for weeks, and he was having a bad game against Brighton. I understand he's the golden boy and the star boy and everything, but why would you not take Bukayo Saka off for Eddie Nketiah instead of a like for like and put Jesus down on the right? I mean, Jesus was our only thing going forward. I didn't think he did bad at all. Yeah, outside of Odegaard, you could tell something was wrong because at points in the second half, Odegaard's picking the ball up off of Ramsdale. And it reminded me of when we were really struggling and Mesut Ozil and Alexis Sanchez and Santi Cazorla used to do that. They'd come all the way into our third or defensive third and try and pick the ball up, try and progress it. And Odegaard was doing that this day. I don't know. I'm trying to remember exactly who the subs were for each. It was Smith Rowe for Xhaka, Reece Nelson for it was Reece Nelson for Xhaka.
Smith Rowe came on for Odegaard, I think, didn't he?
Smith Rowe for Odegaard. It was Thomas Partey for Jorginho, Trossard for Martinelli, and Nketiah for Jesus. And I just don't. I think this is probably Arteta's worst in-game performance as a manager of the season.
Yeah. It felt like he panicked at 1-0, even though we've shown we have the ability to come back, from games when you don't have to make wholesale changes. I feel like he did because I mean, look, as much as I like Smith Rowe and Eddie, if you're trying to come back in a game at this point in time, there's not really a ton of evidence to suggest that they're the players to bring on at this moment in time. Eddie come back from a 4 or 5 week layoff. Smith Rowe, you've not trusted at any point really so far. So if you're not trusting it, you know you're not going to trust him to bring you back. And I don't know, maybe we were still 1-0 down when Smith Rowe came on, so it was just odd. We didn't go 2-0 down to about the 85th minute. So and at that point, I think we were not getting desperate. We were just trying to build play because we weren't really sustaining any pressure against them. But again, you're taking off Odegaard, you're taking off Jesus. These are the players that have really got you to where you are. I know you've got to make some subs, but like you said, Saka being on, I think there could have been better changes. And sometimes I think maybe he's looking at his bench and we know he has a very small pool of players he trusts. It's perhaps his biggest weakness that he can't create a bigger pool of players that he trusts, despite the fact that he's basically overhauled the squad. I know Holding and Xhaka and Tierney aren't his players on paper, but you've got to be able to trust more than 13 in order to win a title. You just have to, because otherwise, a Saliba injury is going to cost you as much as it cost us, and that kind of stuff. And I think we said this last season as well, and I don't want it to be a super negative podcast, but I do think we've had a fantastic season, and it's been one of the most enjoyable seasons in many. But when I look at it, I'm like, okay, now a lot of these are your guys, so really it would have been more understandable if he brought Fabio Vieira on because he's his guy, even though he's not necessarily done it. But I do find it a little bit frustrating that we are affected. I felt this at Everton away, actually. We were 0-0 at Everton away, and we weren't playing great, but they had super athletic midfield, Everton. They had like Onana and a couple of other guys in there that were just super athletic. And Jorginho had barely played a minute for us, and he took Partey straight off. He wasn't having a particularly poor game. Jorginho come on, they scored a minute later from a corner. Now, maybe that would have happened anyway, but I felt that was panicky, to be honest. I was like, 0-0 away at Everton. At that time, I was like, I know they were struggling, Everton, but it's not bad. We don't do well at Goodison Park, notoriously anyway. I was like, it wasn't, nothing to panic about. Partey at that time he was so on form. It was an odd change. Yeah. And, yeah, it's just it is frustrating. It's very, very frustrating. And did you read some of his comments after the game, Garet? Did you read some of them?
I've seen some of them, yeah.
Yeah, I wonder what you thought on it. I wanted to get the exact quotes up, but I was sort of paraphrasing a little bit.
I think it was kind of the first time we've seen Arteta kind of voice his frustrations with his squad. And I don't know if he felt it was finally appropriate to do this because it's done.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, because he's been so positive about his squad and his players and their mentality, and I love them and this and that and all this other stuff. And then, I'm going to paraphrase, but essentially he said, I expect more from my players.
Yeah, exactly.
And it was eye-opening, I think, and a bit foreshadowing, or I expect more from my squad or something like that. And I think it kind of foreshadows to what his expectations are for this summer. And all of the work that I think everyone sees needs to be done. And, you're right. This shouldn't be a super negative discussion because we've had a fantastic season and we've built a lot from seasons past to get to the point where we are today. And when I look back at this season, I don't want to remember it as one where Arsenal pittered out or bottled it or choked or, whatever the narrative is currently. But I'd rather remember it as one where Arsenal firmly established themselves as the second best team in the Premier League unexpectedly with a squad that's super young and still more to develop. I think Arteta said as much, none of these players have peaked yet. That
was an interesting comment, wasn't it? Probably aim more at the younger players, would you say? Because I think
you have to keep that in mind. It's probably the guys that are, 25, 26 younger.
Yeah. Or it's also aimed at the fact that the ones that are older, he might be looking elsewhere for. He might be looking at someone else that might be able to hit a peak because if they're not peaked to 30, 31, they're not getting any better, right? They're not he's not turning back time. He's not that good. Yeah. So I just think that's really interesting. Yeah, so I can't seem to get the exact quote that I wanted to look for, but he said, you're right. He basically said that he felt that last week he was very, very proud, and then this week it was the opposite. And if the team is capable of kind of folding like that, then we need to have a bigger analysis about what's going on collectively. A little bit, like not ultimatum-ish, but very much like, okay, we're gonna be a bit ruthless with this. I felt we're going to be ruthless with this. We're going to assess it, and we're going to remember it. And I think he's going to remember some of it in the summer, and what players that's going to be and how he's going to adjust it will be very sort of interesting and telling. But I think you're right. The overriding thought has to be that we establish ourselves back at the top table. And although we'd love to have pushed it to the final week, in the back of my head when I was watching the Brighton game, I was like, I think I'd feel worse if I thought it was a smidgen of a chance at Wolves and we still didn't do it. I think in a way, I wish we pushed it to the last day. I've been there on the last day when we've not won it. I've been watching Arsenal on the last day, hoping Tottenham would get a result at Man U, and Les Ferdinand putting them 1-0 up, and their whole fan base of Tottenham not celebrating because they're so worried that Tottenham are going to get a result. And I'm like, this is never happening. And why am I even doing this myself? And of course, Tottenham go on to lose the game, and it happened 3 or 4 times. During the point of the team where we were going off the top. It's the worst feeling ever to lose on the last day.
My saving grace for my own mentals for this season to not actually do my head in for the last couple of weeks is that if we would have beat Liverpool, Southampton, and West Ham and still carried on in this manner, lost to City,
still won the league.
They still would have beaten us. It would the whole idea of us having a 7-point, 8-point lead and choking it is a false narrative.
Massively, because they always had a game in hand as well. But yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and then there was the game against us, and then
it's a 6-point swing. Yeah,
it's a convenient narrative because everyone loves to put Arsenal down, no matter who you are, no matter what club you support, no matter what network is paying you to be a pundit. Arsenal's in the crosshairs.
Yeah.
So it's a convenient narrative for them, but in the reality, we're up against a superpower unlike almost anything in all of football. And I think it's good to have the perspective that we took them almost to the last weekend. And you know what? I think that's something to be proud of and to commend to the entire club, to Arteta and Edu and all of those guys and the front room staff that are building this team, to the owners. Although everyone loves to, everyone's kind of not sure how to feel about them, but you gotta say, KSE and the Cronkies, they put their money where their mouth is, and
they're back to
talk the talk and they're walking it. And I think we can expect them to continue walking this coming summer, because if the past tells the future with how KSE operate, when they're close, they go all in.
Yeah,
with some of the other franchises and clubs that they own.
Yeah, did it with the Rams, didn't they?
Yeah, so hopefully the blowback isn't as bad as the Rams, but NFL football and Premier League a little different beast.
The draft switching and all that.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a big turnover. But I think that we should look at this season as a whole as one. Think of it this way, Jack. Say, these results happened earlier in the season, and we went on a killer run to finish second, 4 points shy of City. Just boom, like how Liverpool are right now. Liverpool are on fire. They're really crap earlier in the season, and then here they are, boom, they're winning game after game, and they're climbing up the table, and they might, get where they're trying to be in the top 4 and whatever. Say we did that and we finished the season second, only a few points. The mood would be so much higher. Yeah,
it's all about the end point and how it happens. Yeah.
Yeah. What have you done for me lately is kind of what lives in the memory. So I hope I know the club in Arteta, they will use these last couple weeks as motivation, similarly to how we probably used the last couple weeks of last season as motivation to build and carry that through and progress. But I'm hoping that the fan base, like all of the connection that you feel at the game. I mean, we were 2-0 down to Brighton, and I hear the stadium singing "We Love You, Arsenal." 2-0 down at 83rd, 84th minute, and that's fantastic. I hope that doesn't go away because of these, how things are appearing.
Right. Yeah, because it's amazing how expectations can change. Look at us. We're disappointed we didn't win the title. We're disappointed, but at the same time, I think you're right. I mean, we might as well. Well, I'll mention one of the questions that some of your Arsenal fans over here that sent in some great questions that we're going to call out. But yeah, like you said, it's all about the moment that you and how you finish it. But I just think we've had such a big leap this season, and it wasn't expected. And we were riding the crest of the wave, and we never, for lots of reasons, I don't think we were ever going to be able to repeat the first half of the season. Perhaps the World Cup was the worst thing that could have happened to us in a way, but I just think it happened later than that, and things coincided. We really needed, because of the amount of players that he actually trusts, but also because of the size of the team and the phase that the team is in right now, we needed basically a fully fit season. That's basically what we needed. And do you know what? In the end, we didn't even get close to it. We had Jesus out for 3 to 4 months, Saliba out, Tomiyasu out, Zinchenko out for about 10 games, Partey out for about 10 games without injury. Those are big players in big moments for a big amount of time. And, if you look at one of the last 6 seasons, which was when Liverpool won it, I mean, it was the opposite. Liverpool had basically no longer than a 3 or 4 week big injury, and City had big injuries, and players that were really important for them are out for like the season almost. Laporte was their biggest centre back at that time. I think he got an ACL tear before the season started, or 1 or 2 games into the season. They lost 9 games that season, Man City. They got 81 points, which is the points total we're on now. I mean, that's what they would do. It was an outlier. That was an outlier. That was their off season that they have, that a big team has every now and then, like top team. But if they're on the ball, they're just relentless, and like you said, I don't look at it as bottling, but of course that's going to be the narrative, because that's what creates attention, and people love the banter of it. And I know what it's all like. I mean, but like you said, it was 8 points, but there was a game in hand, and they knew they got to play us, and they knew what our running was as well. By the way, I mean, our running for the last 10 games, it was really tough. I mean, you had Newcastle away in there, Liverpool away in there, Man City away in there. Brighton, you had, and they City really didn't, other than us, they didn't really have a lot on their plate, and all their toughish games were at home. So, I
love how you didn't even mention Chelsea. That kind of makes me happy.
Yeah, it's just you've got to beat relegation battlers, haven't you? Yeah. That's what we all do. And Chelsea's funnest time of the season is going to be letting City turn them over, like they've let everyone else turn them over, just so City can win the league against them. That's going to be Chelsea's funniest time of the season, because they hate us far more than they hate Man City, and no one really hates Man City. That's the problem we've got here. No one really cares, but they see them as like a sort of entity that's separate. So even within the league, no one really has this sort of animosity towards Man City, whereas tons of teams and clubs and historically have it towards Arsenal. Chelsea playing against us, it's just a huge thing. There's a derby every other week in London, whereas Man City, no one cares about Man City. Even Man United fans want Man City to win the league over us. That's how much they despise us. So all of those things as well are very, very difficult. But overall, before we kind of, obviously I don't want to talk too much about the game, but the season has been super successful. We're going to end up somewhere between 81 and 87 points. We've scored a ton of goals. What's cost us is defensively. I think we've conceded the most goals since 1984 at home. You can't win the league with these kind of records coming out. And obviously, I think, like you would, that a large part of that has been since injuries have occurred. But at the same time, you have to be able to handle those injuries better. I mean, it is your biggest sort of, if you're going to have a criticism of Arteta, it is that I don't think he adapts to setbacks within the team quickly enough. Like if there's an injury within the game, like this one, Martinelli went off, and I don't think we looked as sharp when he went off, and we didn't adapt to it. And Saliba injury occurs, and I know it was a double whammy, but I think it takes us too long to find the Kivior solution, for example.
You're right.
And I think he is a top coach, but I think a Pep finds that in half the time, and I think that's and obviously he's got a 60 million player sitting there, so it's slightly different, but You know what I mean?
No, I get what you're saying. I think that's honestly the difference in what and who was winning the Premier League are those adjustments. Man City, I don't think people remember because the Premier League is such like a long, grueling competition, but they were not playing very well up until the World Cup, and then even shortly after, they couldn't quite figure it out, and then Pep turned the whole thing on its head. And I think you're probably right that the World Cup was the worst thing that happened to us because it just gave Pep Guardiola like a month to stew over all these crazy mad scientist ideas on how to restructure his team and all this other stuff. And that adjustment that Pep made had them playing to a level that I don't think I've genuinely ever seen a club perform at. I mean, if you look at the results, if you were to take the Champions League out of it, I want to say they've won every single match except for whatever the fucking reason they can't beat Spurs, and boom, then off they go. I mean, it's win all the way down the line,
and low stress wins too. There's no, even within that, there's no Bournemouth at home.
They're better teams. I mean, it's not even close.
No.
I mean, I remember watching City play Crystal Palace away earlier this season. And at that time, we were still pretty comfortably ahead, but again, had quite a few, I think maybe even 2 or 3 games in hand at this point, maybe 2. And I was like, come on, Palace, like, this is a dodgy team. They're playing at Crystal Palace. No one likes to go there. It's loud. They're always up for it. We get battered almost every season we go there, except for this season. And it's like 3-0, 4-0. Not even. It's a walk in the freaking park.
Yeah. It's the machine, isn't it? It's just a machine that keeps rolling. And it is frustrating, and, I do. But even that's the difference between, like, I'm not saying Arteta is, just because he didn't see that adjustment, I don't want to sort of, absolutely ruin him for it. Look at Klopp's getting lauded at the moment for inverting Trent Alexander, when rather than people's going, how has he only seen this now? Because for 18 months... literally all the data has said Trent Alexander is a terrible defensive right back if your team doesn't have perfect players around him in order to achieve the results. A bit like us with Zinchenko, right? But even Arteta, I think, has seen the issues with Zinchenko. I don't think he's trust the alternative. But Klopp basically didn't even want an alternative. And then recently they've pushed him into midfield. He's looked, fantastic in there since they played against us in the second half, basically. And everyone's lauding it as this huge innovation when Pep's been doing inverted fullback for 3-4 years. Arteta's been trying it for 2 years and it's been successful. And suddenly Klopp took too long. I tell Liverpool fans, and they hate it. I went, he took way too long to realise that. They're like, no, it's working. He's doing fantastic. And I went, you're barely going to make Champions League if you're lucky this season, and he could have done it way sooner. So, like, Pep is a different animal. He saw, someone like Ake, and he basically put 4 centre backs at the back. 2 of them realised that they could be agile enough to play fullbacks, and he realised he removed all the weaknesses of Cancelo and Zinchenko in one clean swoop. It was genius, Again, it was nice to have a 40-50 million player to look at as an alternative rather than 2 million Rob Holding or someone like that. But overall, terrific season. Very frustrating we couldn't push it further because the season is now effectively over. Arteta said that. I'm reading some of his comments. He said, we keep wanting to dig for that dream, and when you have to play in these moments, you cannot do what we did in the second half. And he says there's a lot of things we have to analyse and think about because that can just simply not happen. And in saying that, Garet, what do you want to see for the next 2 games? Because for me, at the end of that game, I said, look, season's over. We're going to finish second. And by the way, a week ago, some people were saying we're going to fall down to 3rd or 4th. If we'd lost to Chelsea and lost to Newcastle, no one lose to Chelsea, sorry. But if someone had lost and lost, there would have been 4 points behind us with 4 games left. And then people would have been looking at it. Currently, we sit, 12, 15 points clear of 3rd place or whatever it is. So, it could have easily have really gone to a proper collapse. We kind of settled the ship a little bit. But what do you want to see over the next 2 games? I personally want to see what the future might look like. At the very least, not delve into the past. And we've heard some transfer rumours that might maybe push the way we look.
I think I'm curious to see if the rumours that are swirling around this week about Granit Xhaka, for example, if they're, and even Jorginho to an extent, All those guys that are kind of on the bubble. I'm curious to see if that impacts our starting 11 for the next couple matches. Primarily, I want to see if Emil Smith-Rowe gets in there. There was a lot of talk about, I think we even talked about this, maybe it was last week or the week prior, but I think it would be such a bad decision to get rid of Emil Smith-Rowe because of his lack of usage this season. I mean, the guy practically was playing on a torn groin and was our joint top scorer 2 seasons ago and got it corrected this season and just hasn't had the opportunity to come back. I mean, the kid needs a full preseason. He needs to come back fully fit, and he's got the stuff. I mean, we've seen it at the Premier League level. And I know that there was some talk about him taking on that Granit Xhaka role because he does. He very much reminds me of Aaron Ramsey in the way that he plays, carries the ball, runs through the lines, but he always has that good timing of running into the box late and that's how he scores a lot of his goals. He scored a lot of his goals for us like that 2 seasons ago. So I'd like to see Emil Smith-Rowe and if he's utilized at all. And outside of that, I just want to see us end the season on a high. Genuinely, I'd love for us to just kind of steady the ship a little bit, have a good performance at Forest, come back, beat Wolves, nice lap of appreciation. I don't know. Maybe it's too simplistic, but I think I'm looking forward to so much more in the summer that I don't think this team has the answers for to show us in the next 2 weeks. That's where all my questions are.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, I don't think. Yeah, I think the next 2 games will be forgotten very early into the summer once the transfer window starts rolling. But I think Smith-Rowe is the obvious one. I mean, he's still not coming on before Reece Nelson, who is largely being thought of as leaving at this point. He's turned down contract offers. He's getting offers from elsewhere in the league. He's obviously probably going to be playing more. Again, I thought he was probably the most lively of the substitutions once again. But I personally have got no issue with selling him or letting him go as long as we replace him. But I think the right winger is actually in my top 3 needs in the summer. But if Smith-Rowe doesn't feature in the next 2 games, and I probably mean from the start, I would say that is a real concern. And Mike, what was Mike's last name? Sorry, what was Mike's last name? You asked questions.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So he asked some cool questions, but the first one was keep or sell Smith-Rowe, and I'm with you. I'd love to see a full season of him fully fit, and if he's not there, then okay. Like this time next season, if he's had a really good chances to start some games and things like that, and had a full preseason, no injury issues, not playing with one, then I would look at that. But I that would be one of the players that was certainly one of the homegrown players that I would be like, let's just see. I feel like a lot of the factors you said there, this sort of makes him tailor-made for that Xhaka role, possibly. But that's where I'd play him.
I thought too. I seen him walking around the pitch.
He's like 6 foot.
I know, he's a big kid.
Yeah, he's 6 foot. He's not as big as Xhaka. Might be 6'1", 6'2", but he's not much smaller than him.
Yeah, I think he's physically got the stature to play that role. And I maybe I dreamt it, but I could have sworn I saw a report maybe it was even from Arsenal that kind of showed Arteta's desire to have Emil Smith-Rowe play as a box-to-box midfielder. And I've just kind of held on to that ever since I read that. I don't know, can't recall where I saw it, and I could have dreamt it. But I think if we get rid of him, it would just be a mistake. Genuinely. I
just wonder what's changed from. There's definitely something that has changed from the Bournemouth game where he brought him on. And I think what changed was Reece Nelson really, was the man of the match in that game and pushed himself. But they're not really the same position, but they are another attacking option. But he came on first, didn't he? Trossard got injured against Bournemouth. Smith-Rowe came on for him and then was subbed consequently, and Nelson came on and obviously, did his thing and was amazing and scored the winning goal. And then since then, Smith-Rowe's game time has been drastically reduced, and he's only really brought him on at points in game where the game either feels like it's gone or it's completely out of the equation. We've won it or lost it. I think a Man City away probably came on at 3-0 down or something like that, you know?
I just have this hunch that he's not quite right yet.
Yeah, and he needs that full preseason.
I just have a feeling he's not quite right. And I have a feeling like maybe it's hopeful thinking, but I just have this feeling that the athletic training staff are like very much so limiting the amount of playing time he can have. Like this guy can only put in at full speed 25% of a match. Like he's I don't know. I mean, it was a pretty serious reconstructive groin surgery, as I understand it, and you know, I don't know. Maybe that's hopeful thinking. I just think Reece Nelson was one. I don't know if it's recency bias or what, but every time the kid comes on, I feel like he's the one that's got the most just zip about him.
He looks very sharp.
He had a shot against Brighton that was inches away from the far post, putting his laces right through it. And, you know, he just has that it factor about him. I'm not saying by any stretch of the imagination that he's the guy to push Saka on the right wing. By no means. But I think you would be hard-pressed to find a better alternative than re-signing Reece Nelson than going out into the open market and trying to find a guy that can just play on the wings. From a financial perspective, it's kind of like Eddie Nketiah last season, right? It was like, well, do we just give Eddie $100,000 a week, or do we let him walk and then go pay $20 million and then give a kid $60,000 a week? Like or do we just, you know, I don't know. And this and Reece Nelson, I think these are guys that we need to keep around.
Yeah, I think the issue there will be largely from the player. I think it's like Kieran Tierney. You know, I've had a lot of not arguments, but debates with people this week about, you know, we need to keep Kieran Tierney around. I said, well, first of all, I mean, I understand why we want to get rid of him, but second of all, the player wants to play more, and I think Reece Nelson's probably looking at it and saying, "It's time for me to start football matches." You know, he's gone from Hoffenheim being sub mostly. Feyenoord, he played a little bit more, but was on in and out. I think he was at maybe another club for a while. He's been largely a bench player everywhere he's gone, and he probably just wants to start somewhere. And we're probably not offering him as big a wage as we were to Eddie Nketiah, for example, who we offered, you know, $100,000 a week to. It seems like we're not offering Reece Nelson quite that much, I would have thought. So probably it's largely coming from the player. I'd like to keep him around as well. I just think it's largely probably coming from the player, but it'll be interesting. I do really, really want a right winger in, like you just said, to push Bukayo Saka. And when was the last time we were able to sit Saka for a couple of weeks?
I feel for him. Genuinely, I do. Like, right. I was really harsh on him in like my thoughts post Brighton, and even now, I mean, I said how bad he was, but I feel for him because the guy is forced to play week in, week out, 90 minutes, goal or assist.
Yeah.
You do it. You have to, you know, but I kind of don't sympathize with him as well because Arteta doesn't. And Arteta, I think he's even on the record saying like the best players on the best clubs in the world play multiple matches a week. Like no excuses.
And I agree with that, but when you look at let's look at what Pep's done with his wingers. I mean, I think Grealish has played more than most, but look how slow Grealish's progression has been into the first team to play, and barely started last season. And look at Phil Foden, barely starts this season against Arsenal. Man City, their right winger on paper for the month leading into that was Riyad Mahrez. Played 3 minutes, came on when it was 4-1, and that's the ability, because they can go, well, I'm going to sit you, Riyad, because I'm going to put Bernardo Silva there. And well, who have we been able to say that to for Odegaard or for Saka? We've not been able to do it. And I just think, much as I like Reece Nelson, I personally can't envisage a time where we go, I think we could sit Saka for these 3 games this week and play Nelson in them, and that would be great to see if Nelson takes his chance there. I just don't see it happening personally. I like him from the bench. He looks like he's got so much energy and speed on the ball, and when the game's chaotic, I think Nelson opens it up. But from the start, I think we're going to have to pay big money for a right winger, and I'm still very, very frustrated that we went for a right winger in Rafinha in 60 million, and everyone was like, why are we spending money on a right winger? And we never did it, and then we just went away from it. And we never went back to it. We tried to do it with Mudryk, but he was a left-sided player. We never got that one either. And I'm not forgetting that Trossard and Jorginho were not stopgap, but they were alternative signings, and they were not first choice, probably even second choice signings for the wing option and the central midfield option. And we're going to address the central midfield position. I think we all know that. But there is not a ton of talk about us definitely addressing the right wing position, and for me it's the next on the list. I really think it's the next on the list, especially when you've got Champions League coming up. Can't be playing Saka 90 minutes. I just don't think we can. I mean, he has got the ability to do it. He's played 78 games in a row in the Premier League. I mean, and like 90% of those have been from the start. It's just, I mean, it's insane.
And he probably sees all of them all the way through.
Yeah, and he plays a lot. Exactly, they plays a large proportion of them. And what we don't want is just this guy who's 23, 24, and he's almost got too many minutes in his legs. And we've all seen what's happened with the Wilshires and the.
I don't even want to say it.
It's just worrying. But Mike asked some other great questions, and I'm going to quick fire some of them to you. Does Sambi deserve a chance next season? Yes or no?
I liked Sambi when he was here, but I think we put him in a position to fail when we expected him to be just as good as Thomas Partey in the role that Thomas Partey plays.
Home out to dry. Yeah.
I won't lie to you. I don't know how he got on at Palace.
Didn't play much under Hodgson. Vieira was using him, but left too soon.
Yeah, so I don't know what happened after Vieira left, because I know he was starting when Vieira was there, but they were pretty poor overall.
Yep.
But, it's funny because I think this also begs the question for a couple of our other loanees. Nuno Tavares, I don't think we'll ever see again.
Nope, gone. Yeah, agree.
Fine by me. Sambi, I thought he was a great player. I really liked his touch, and he had like that long stride, and I think he has something about him. I just don't know. I don't know if. I think the expectation, like I just said, of him being Thomas Partey reincarnate is a not fair for him. Nicola Pepe is on the books and coming back from France.
I mean, hard to get rid of him.
That's a right winger. I don't know. Yeah. I mean,
apparently Nice don't want him either. They don't. Well, they might not want him because he's on 175 grand a week. That's probably why they don't want him. But
yeah. What do you think about that situation?
I definitely don't see him coming back. I mean, I think Arteta. There's no track record of Arteta playing a player regularly or having him in the squad regularly, loaning him out and then bringing him back in. There's no player he's done it with. So I think just based on that alone, I don't see it. And I also think he's just a very, very different type of player to Saka. I don't think he trusts him on the ball enough. And if you look at like City's wingers, they just never lose the ball. They just don't lose the ball. Pepe loses the ball all the time. I mean, it's just all the time. And what he has is this star quality when he gets into the final third. That's what he definitely has. But he's not trustworthy with the ball. He's had 6 goals, 0 assists in 19 games for Nice, who are, I think, around mid-table. I'm not sure. But I think it's going to be a very difficult one. So I don't think we'll keep him, and I think it'll be very difficult to remove.
That's a shame, because I agree wholeheartedly that Arteta doesn't want him to be around. Just don't see where he goes.
Yeah, me neither. I've got no idea. I don't know how long his contract is either. I mean,
he's got time on it, that's for sure. I got another question here, actually, since we're on the topic of transfers. Jordan asked, what is the lowest value, I assume, you would accept for Tierney to sell him to a Premier League rival like Newcastle? And I think he asks because there's been links today of a number of players for Arsenal that are kind of on the chopping block. And Tierney was directly linked to Newcastle, which I could see because...
Yes, that's been the strongest link, yeah.
Yeah, I could see.
What's your number? Well...
remind me, what did we bring him in for?
About 20,
Okay.
I think.
I think you're right. I wanted to say 20, but I thought that might have been too low.
I'm double checking it because I don't want to be wrong. But
yeah, let me know. But I mean, I really, really rate Tierney as a left back. I would
25. Yep.
I would venture to say he is probably the first or second best true left back in the Premier League. In the sense of like just being a traditional left back, none of this like inverted number 10s that we put in the back four, to give us more of the ball. I think if there's a market for him, we could sell him for the value we purchased or more. I think we could very simply turn a profit on Kieran Tierney, 30, 35 million.
I agree with those numbers. Absolutely. I think that's realistic. You know, to a rival, you should be expecting that. Yeah. I think if he had a better injury history, you'd probably be saying 40 plus. But you know, he doesn't quite. It's a bit suspect though. This year he's been relatively fit. Oddly enough, he's relatively fit. The season we don't really need him as much, which is of course
Maybe that's why. Honestly,
yeah, that's a good. No, I mean, it's a good question, and I think I agree with your numbers. I wouldn't change it at all. Pepe's contract actually runs out in 2024, which means he's only got 1 year left, which might make it possible. Because if he's only got 1 year left, we might be able to loan him. We might have to pay part of his wage or something like that. But if we can loan him into a purchase or something like that, or at the end of it, you know, do something like we did with Niles a little bit. You know, Niles basically, I think, had already been removed from this loan.
Yeah.
It would have been like basically it's terminated from the club or something.
Yeah.
So when you've got a year left, there's a bit more chance. I thought he was still 2025, but he's still 2024. So there's a chance there. Who's going to? Xhaka is today has been not only strongly leaked. They're saying the deal is almost done. Some reliable sources are saying the deal is almost done for Leverkusen, somewhere between 13 and 15 million. If you're talking to Leverkusen, you've got to be talking about Moussa Diaby. I just don't. You cannot be even discussing Granit Xhaka without talking about their right winger who's got 13 goals and 9 assists or something this season, and he did the same last season as well. And they've taken Xabi Alonso's Leverkusen's almost to win the Europa League. So I think he's my right winger for Saka to challenge against. But who would you? I find this question quite difficult, so I'm wondering if you've got an answer for it. Who would you choose to replace Xhaka if it's an external purchase and you're not envisaging the Smith Rowe? Obviously, that would be the ideal situation. Save us a lot of money.
Wow, this is a hard one because I don't know if it's a Xhaka replacement that I foresee. Because I could see that if I have like my Edu hat on and what I think he's going to do this summer, I don't know that he's going to replace Granit Xhaka per se. I think he's going to supplement the midfield and he's going to buy Declan Rice. If I could guess, who of all the midfielders that we're linked to, all the ones that we've pursued and past windows and everything, there's so much smoke around Rice that I think he's going to be the one that comes in. And I think he's going to be the one that comes in to just bolster the midfield. I don't think we're going to, the Granit Xhaka sale is one that took me really by surprise. If it happens, then okay. I genuinely don't know who we would put to replace in Europe in that position, but because I don't see Declan Rice playing that position.
No,
I see him as more of like a guy at the base of the midfield. Mm-hmm. But if anything that we've learned in the last number of weeks from this season is that Thomas Partey is not a guy that can play across a couple of competitions, multiple matches a week. It burnt him into the ground, practically ran him into the ground, and his hamstrings are just barely hanging on for dear life. There were pictures of him in the bus with like physios from Arsenal just sitting with them. Like, I don't know what they were doing there, but they were there. Obviously worried. Yeah. And I see us bringing in a Declan Rice, like big money transfer, and seems like a guy that would just fit the system, fit the profile of the team.
Well, he would certainly fit. Sorry to interrupt you. He would certainly fit if you were going to talk about a Xhaka replacement. character and leadership wise,
Yeah, absolutely.
it
Which
fits
I
like
think
a
is
glove.
so crucial about him.
I think it is crucial, yeah. I think that might be even more crucial than the footballing side, because I'm a huge Caicedo. If I purposely didn't mention Caicedo, I just thought he was I thought he was the best player on the pitch, by the way, against Arsenal. Matoma was right there with him, but I mean, he basically was centre mid, and then he was right back, and he just looked like he was doing it with ease. And he's a little bit of a dirty player, and he's definitely got a bit about him as well in a different way.
You know who he kind of reminds me of? You remember Ramirez for Chelsea when he was good?
Oh yeah, very good player, Ramirez. Yeah, very good.
He does remind me a little bit of him. And
similar engine to him as well.
Yeah, that's kind of I think the similarity that really draws me to them. It's like Ramirez was all over the place, making life absolute hell for us. But I mean, I just don't see a world where Caicedo and Rice are purchased by Arsenal in the same window. Like it's never going to happen.
We're more likely to get neither than both.
Yeah,
that's what we are. And that's what I love when Arsenal fans are saying it. I'm like, you've been burned so many times before, and you come back with this full confidence into the next window. And look, I go back and forth with the Rice Caicedo, because like you, I'm like, if we're going to get one, it's going to be one. And I like you know, when you say who's going to replace Xhaka, and you mention Rice, I think character-wise and leadership-wise, he definitely has a lot of that, but he's not really an 8. I mean, some of the 8s that I'm thinking about that we maybe have been sort of talked about with, but it's very difficult with the 8, because Tielemans would be one, possibly Xavi Simons, who plays attacking midfield and right wing, was linked to us yesterday from PSV. He's a really good player, but very different sort of technical player, but very, very good going forward. I think ultimately, I feel like Xhaka's had a great season, but I think I watch him sometimes, this being one of the games, and I think someone that's just a little bit more natural going into the final third, doesn't take that extra touch, because I do feel like sometimes Xhaka is the spare man going forward, and I feel like he has a lot of space to run into, which is why I keep going back to prime Smith Rowe and thinking we can't lose this guy yet, because I'm seeing things. But what's really interesting me about the 8 is, will we directly replace the 8, like you said, or will we look at players that are already at the club? Will we try to use that money in other ways, like solidify the midfield at the base a bit more? All that kind of stuff questions it. If you buy Caicedo and Rice and you still have Partey and Jorginho, it feels very collected at the 6 to me. I don't really see any natural 8 there. Yeah. You know, so I like you, I think, you know, it's one or the other, and the 8 will be a very interesting one. Mike,
you know whose name we haven't even mentioned this entire time in the midfield is Fabio Vieira.
Yeah, what do you think will happen? Oh, did he ask a question? He did. Is Fabio Vieira good enough? Was another question we got. Is Fabio Vieira good enough? And I'm reluctant to judge him too much just yet, but I think next season's crucial for him. What about you?
I agree. I think he's shown signs, like especially in the European matches, like the Europa League and stuff that we were playing in. He had some good performances. But you know, he just seems like he needs a little bit more steel about him. You know, I don't know. I think next season is ultimately the one that's going to tell his tale at Arsenal. There's a lot of like adaptation period and all this other stuff. I don't know. I don't know the history of many players coming over from Portugal, the Portuguese league, to England and truly succeeding like right away. Spent a lot of money on him. Someone sees something in him. So I hope it comes good. I don't know if he's a guy that wants to play that number 8, or if he's like the guy that backs up Odegaard. But when Odegaard has struggled, or when we've tried to change things up, it's never been Fabio Vieira as of late.
It's been more for Xhaka, actually.
Yeah, to come in and play for him there. So yeah, when Xhaka, that's right, wasn't it? He actually started a few games in that position. Yeah. So I think time will tell on that one, but I'll be watching him closely, to be honest, because I don't know that anyone has seen anything from him this season that truly is like, oh, got a player here, you know, got something here.
Yeah.
If anything, I think Reece Nelson has probably shown more promise this season than Vieira has. Which is...
he's definitely pitted out. I felt like I saw some stuff pre-World Cup. He had a start at Brentford, and I thought he was terrific. He scored a wonder goal.
Mm-hmm.
He had the game against Wolves, which was the game just before the World Cup. And Xhaka felt sick about a minute into it, and he created the goal for Odegaard, and he had a pretty good game. I want to say I think there's a player in there, and I want to say that he won't loan it. I think there's been a lot of links to him loaning him out, and I want to say that he won't do that, and he'll be part of the squad going forward.
I don't see him being loaned out either.
No, I don't. I think he's gonna. I really like his technical ability. I just physically way off. So when we play Wolves next week and he sees Adama Traore, just go into the gym with him and spend a month in there with the gym with him, and he'll be all right, probably. And he'll probably be a proper player. But I do really like I think his final ball, early on in the season, I was watching him, I was like, his final ball is excellent, like really good. And then it pitted out, and he had some really bad performances post-World Cup, which was odd because he didn't go to it. And it just sort of faded out a little bit for him. So a couple more from Mike before we go. What is the lowest number we've done that one? Sorry. Ideal Xhaka replacement. We kind of spoke on that a little bit. I think, we spoke about another possible solution there with Vieira. So is it Vieira? Is it Smith Rowe? Is it going to be someone else? I'd like us not to attack the 8 with huge amounts of money until we've done a few other areas like the 6 and the right winger and probably a fullback. But, personally, that would be right, because I don't really know what he's going to do with the likes of Smith Rowe and Vieira. But the last question, which is not a great one to remind ourselves of, but do you think conceding that late goal to Liverpool is the point where our season turned? Garrett?
Jordan asked me this question. And I don't think it is, personally.
Do you think there was a turning point, or do you think it's
No, I don't, because I think the nature of going away to Anfield is kind of like a experience that you put in a box and you just deal with it there and then and there. Going to Anfield, Spurs, Old Trafford, I feel like for whatever reason those seem to have ripple effects. But that's kind of like the old adage of form's out the window and big derby match and all this other stuff. I think going to Anfield is an experience similar to that, like the North London derby. Because I don't know why. I just feel like when we're there, it's just something that it's 90 minutes in a vacuum that you have to deal with. So I don't think the 2-0 lead that got pulled back, I think we just went to Anfield and we get out of Anfield and then we get on with our season. I think a win there has a big amplifying effect on what can happen. But we've been beaten there so many times over the last couple of seasons. I just think we go there and try and get something out of it, and we did.
Yeah.
I think the turning point of our season was when Saka missed his penalty against West Ham.
Yeah, that's another one that's been talked about. Yeah, because with that we go 3-1 up, do we? I think.
Yeah, and then we conceded, I think, maybe a minute later. And to me, that was such a pivotal moment of our season, because I forget what the table looked like at that time, but we may have been able to go 10 or 11 points clear of City. And then we would have had a couple, who knows what would have happened if we get out of there 2-1, 3-1 out of West Ham, and we go and play Southampton. To me, the confidence level of Bukayo Saka just went. I think that was when you truly started to see his dip in form. The ripple effect that has on the squad overall is significant because of how much we rely on him. I think you could just feel in that moment that it was slipping away, and we were still in such a good position. That's how it felt for me, anyways. I mean, if I were to look back on the last couple of weeks, what could I have back? What moment could I change? I would have Bukayo Saka net that penalty, and we get out of there.
The odd thing about that moment was he was having a terrible game. And I remember him stepping up for the penalty, knowing he was our penalty taker, going, I know he's our penalty taker, but he is having a terrible game. And I felt nervous, and I never really felt nervous with him taking a penalty before. It's easy to say that in hindsight, but I remember him having a very poor game. And he wasn't great away at Liverpool either before that, the week before it. And it felt like it had started to come on. The turning point for me was the 20 minutes in the Europa League where we lost Saliba and then we lost Tomiyasu.
Yeah.
Although it didn't have the effect, I went to see Arsenal Leeds after that, a few weeks after that game, and we beat Leeds. But I remember sitting there with my brother and saying, yeah, we're a little lucky to go 1-0 up here because they've had a lot of chances, and we had a lot of games like that where we'd win them, like we'd beat Palace at home, but we'd concede a lot of chances, so many more than what we would concede previously, just so many more. And you just felt the inevitable with the huge run-in that we had coming in. We knew games were going to get tougher, and you just felt that we weren't necessarily going to be strong enough to see it through, because our game had changed drastically without Saliba, and should it have? Probably not. But when you combine Saliba and Tomiyasu, I have a little bit more sympathy for Arteta, because it's two positions that are basically the same. You know, he's right back, or is it? You could have moved Ben White to centre back then, and you didn't have the opportunity to do it. So it's really a double whammy. It's the equivalent of City losing, Ake and then losing Laporte, and they've loaned out Cancelo, so they've got to play Rico Lewis back there for 7 weeks. Something like that. Just it's a big whammy. Rodri and then Stones on top of it, or Calvin Phillips on top of it. It's double whammy, and that's I don't think that's easy for any club, let alone clubs with limited spending like we, or a little bit limited spending like we do. But last one on the loans before I do predictions. Balogun's committed to US. You must be happy with that.
Yeah,
do you think that change? Obviously, a few weeks ago we heard that Balogun is leaving, but basically wants to be starting every regularly. Otherwise, he's going to leave. Just wonder what your thoughts are on what we do with Balogun and Eddie, and does the commitment to USA change anything with our ownership and like Matt Turner in the squad and all that?
No, that I never even considered that actually. Ownership, nationality alliances, and Matt Turner. I didn't even think about that. Maybe it'll help, but what I want and what I think to happen are two different things. What I want to happen is that love him. We know who Eddie Nketiah is. His stock will probably never be higher. And I hate to say it, but bluntly, I just don't think he's going to be any better than what he is currently. So capitalize on that and sell him to some mid-table team that could use a very good striker. And he will be very good for them,
what would we get for him? What do you think we'd get for Eddie Nketiah?
What did we get for Joe Willock? 25 million?
Yeah.
Thereabouts.
Yeah.
Maybe striker 30 million. I would say you could make a case, because I don't want to downplay him, but Eddie Nketiah was a very suitable striker for us when Gabriel Jesus was out with his knee, and we were top of the league the entire time. Right, so he has that in his resume.
That's true. That's true for a good period of time.
Yeah, so he was leading the line for the team that was top of the league for a number of months. Yeah. So but if anything, to me, that just gives us more selling power. I want to sell Eddie because I think someone in the front line is going to be sold. So to me, it should be Eddie, and I think Flo Balogun needs to come in. And I think,
at the very least, given a full preseason.
Yeah, the guy's going to be part of the US tour.
Yeah,
excited for him.
That's really what happened with Saliba, isn't it? I don't know if Arteta knew maybe he did straight away. He didn't feel that way. Mm-hmm. We saw him in pre-season and we were like, whoa, we look amazing. This guy's insane. And a lot of us already felt it, but you've got to give Balogun. He's not given. The reason I think he's got a chance, Balogun, is he's not given him one yet. He's not given him any chance.
Right. It's not like Guendouzi or Pepe. These guys,
Sambi or Nuno. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Who are really up against it.
In
terms of their Arsenal career.
Yeah.
He's got a chance to. goodness. I mean, he went to France, and is he going to finish the season the league scorer, top scorer?
I think he might be second behind like Mbappe or something like that, or actually he might be behind Lacazette, which doesn't do wonders for his the nature and difficulty levels of League One when Lacazette's banging in 4. He is about 4th top goal scorer now. It's Mbappe, Lacazette, Jonathan David, and he's 5th, Diallo, and then it's him. He's on 19, Mbappe's on 26, Lacazette's on 25.
Wow, how about that?
Wowza. But still, an incredible season.
Come on, yeah, a great season nonetheless. Probably was top of the... I don't know what his most recent... I can't tell you. I watched 1 minute of French football.
I believe he scored this weekend, actually.
Good. See?
Yep.
Bring him in. He's on fire.
Yeah, exactly. He scored
I just think he needs to come and have his opportunity. And the point I was making, I think, about a week or two ago about this scenario is that just the wage difference, not that Eddie's breaking our bank or anything, but there's value to bringing in Flo Balogun and selling Eddie. There's value there. And we have a lot of work to do in terms of forcing the squad this summer. So
the counter argument there might be, and I'd rather sell Eddie than Balogun, by the way. Though I wouldn't say I want to sell both, but if we had like an alternative number 9 that was very different to Jesus, by that I mean bigger, stronger, though Jesus is strong, more clinical, proven at the top level, and we had that in the back pocket, I wouldn't be against Eddie and a Balogun sale, although I don't like the fact we've not even seen Balogun in an Arsenal shirt. Yeah. But I wonder, I think I like the thought on
let me bounce this off you. So why not bring in Balogun and find that other look type of striker when Jesus can and has played on the right wing almost exclusively in his club career.
Yeah.
Especially for Manchester City.
Yeah. I think if we get a striker and we don't get a right winger, that has to be what we're planning. But the odd thing there is I don't think he's even used Jesus on the right wing. Maybe he did for like 15 minutes in a game or something like that. I can't recall it personally. Like even when Trossard played up top with him, it was Trossard that was out wide. Even when Eddie plays up top with him, it's Eddie that's out wide. We basically have kept Jesus very, very central. Yeah, that can all change really quickly.
Yeah, that's not to just. But my point is that I think Jesus is so versatile that if he needs to play on the right wing,
he can do it. Yeah.
So nothing to consider.
It is something to consider, and that's an interesting one. I'm really curious what happens at the 9 position and what we do with Balogun and stuff like that. I'd like to see him in pre-season. At the very least, I'd like to see him in pre-season. And with Eddie, if there's takers for him, and the wage, it's sort of like Ollie Watkins is on 75 grand a week. Eddie's on 100 grand a week. You'd probably want, Ollie Watkins is more established. But I think you're right. There will be takers. There's got to be takers for him. He's not had a bad season. So. By all means. What's your prediction? Not that it's hugely important, but what's your prediction for Nottingham Forest away, who are still trying to guarantee their Premier League survival, I think, and Arsenal? I think it's a Saturday night game, I want to say, but I've got to double check that.
I think you're right.
What's your prediction for that, mate?
Nottingham away. They have it all to play for. We don't. Maybe I'm a little cynical, but I'll say 1-1.
Yeah. It sounds. We went to Forest a few years ago, didn't we? When we were in the cup and they were in the championship, and we lost there in those famous all white kits. So hopefully that's not a bad omen, and we correct that. But 1-1. Who's your scorer?
My scorer will be, just for the sake of it, I'll say Smith Rowe.
Yeah, I was going to say that as well.
As a starter.
It's got to start. It's just got to start. But he won't even be in the squad, will he? I'll go... screw it. I'll go 2-1 Arsenal. I'll go 2-1 Arsenal, and I'll say Jesus first scorer. Not that it matters too much, but it'll be very interesting to see what happens, and we'll get on next week, and maybe there's a lot of transfer rumours coming out early. Maybe we do something early, but they're coming over to America, big fan base, going to want a few of those new fresh, new, shiny players in the new debacle of an away kit.
Let me ask you a question. Chelsea do the unthinkable and get a result against City.
Would they have to win or draw?
I think they have to win.
Lime isn't never happening, is it?
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm sorry. City have to win the league. They could, if they draw, it's still,
it's still up in the air.
Yeah, it's still there. I saw a world where someone did a little Predictatron meter thingy, and it was Arsenal win, City draw, loss, and Arsenal win the league.
Why do we do it to us?
I know, but I'm just going to say it. If Chelsea do the unthinkable and just don't lose, will you believe again?
No, I refuse to believe again. It's the hope that I always post the meme from Seinfeld. My dream is to be hopeless. That's what my dream is at this point. I just want it over with.
It's gonna for me. It's gonna be like the is it The Sopranos?
You
just pull me right back in.
Yeah,
whatever it is.
And you know what, they play after us, so it's reliant upon us actually going to Forest and winning.
We do have to win.
We have to beat Forest, which I think throws up all. City are probably sitting there going, we might not even turn up at Chelsea. And we'll still get 3 points. But Chelsea would just give them to them. But Chelsea fans would love nothing more than to roll over and die for Manchester City. I know that much. So I don't, when those kind of things are in play, but that is the slight frustration. It would have been nice to watch another weekend of football being like, to see what happens here. Like just for the sake. Now I'm largely just invested in who doesn't get top 4. That and I go back and forth with who I don't want it to be because I hate them all.
I just hope Everton get relegated so we don't have to go to Goodison Park anymore.
Yeah, I agree with that, and that looks relatively unlikely at the moment. It looks like the bottom 3 are going to go down. I think, doesn't it? It looks
Everton are right there in it. I'm looking at it right now. They're all on 36 games played. Everton,
they are right in it. Yeah.
Everton at 32 points, Leeds at 31, Leicester at 30.
I'd have no problem with a Leeds or Leicester staying up over at Everton.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, get them down. Dyche is a nightmare. And he only cares about playing us. He rolls over for everyone, but he plays against us and he starts chewing an extra packet of gum. It's really annoying. He's really annoying, the gravel drinker, isn't he?
I know,
yeah. Proper annoying. Get him out of the league. He's a championship manager, so get him back where he belongs.
Yeah, I think that's a great call.
Yeah.
Well, who knows? Maybe after this weekend, then Chelsea fans, United fans, Liverpool fans will buy their tickets to the City Parade and have a gay old time over there.
Yeah, they love all that stuff, don't they? Yeah, they'll have a cheery time. It just shows how massive we are. We've not won the league for 20 years, and people have been dreading the thought of it. And what's told me this season is we are still absolutely despised by a large group of fan base. I couldn't be happier about it, to be honest. But so I'll take it. We're living rent free in people's heads all season, which is amazing. Right. Garet, it's been a pleasure. Thank you to Mike and Jordan for asking questions, and maybe get them on a chat in the future weeks. We do ones over the summer because a transfer window for me is just, since Arteta came in, has probably been the most exciting time because I actually believe what he says about it. I'm like, you're actually going to do stuff. So this 200 million spending thing might actually happen. It's amazing.
The war chest. At long last, the war chest.
Brilliant. Gotta love Josh Kroenke. Get in that SoFi Stadium, or wherever it is. The spaceship, I call it. Fantastic. I'll be there. We'll be there. But boys, we'll be back at boys and girls over at Purely Arsenal FP on Twitter and Purely Arsenal on YouTube, Spotify, and all your podcast apps, Apple Podcasts, all that. And give us a review or send in some questions. We love to answer them. We appreciate it. And we'll be back next week after smashing Forest and after Lampard's tricky Chelsea going at a 1-0 Mudryk win at the Etihad. Dream on. Okay. Thank you, guys. Love the Arsenal.